choir of rills singing their way down from the snow to the river. And when we call to mind that thousands of these rejoicing rills are assembled in each one of the main streams, we wonder the less that our Sierra rivers are songful all the way to the sea. About sundown saw a flock of dun greyish sparrows going to roost in crevices of a crag above the big snowfield. Charming little mountaineers. Found a species of sedge in flower within 8 or 10 feet of a snowbank. Judging by the looks of the ground, it can hardly have been out in the sunshine much longer than a week, and is likely to be buried again in fresh snow in a month or so, thus making a winter about 10 months long, while spring, summer, and autumn are crowded and hurried into 2 months. How delightful it is to be alone here! How wild everything is! Wild as the sky, and as pure. Never shall I forget this big, divine day, the cathedral and its thousands of Cassiope bells, and the landscapes around them, and this camp in the grey crags above the woods, with its stars and streams and snow. September 8. Day of climbing, scrambling, sliding on the peaks around the highest sources of the Tuolumne and Merced. Climbed 3 of the most commanding of the mountains, whose names I don't know. Crossed streams and huge beds of ice and snow, more than I could keep count of. Neither could I keep count of the lakes scattered on tablelands, in the cirques of the peaks, and in chains of the canyons, linked together by the streams, a tremendously wild grey wilderness of hacked, shattered crags, ridges and peaks, a few clouds drifting over and through the midst of them, as if looking for work. In general views, all the immense round landscape seems raw and lifeless as a quarry, yet the most charming flowers were found rejoicing in countless nooks and garden-like patches everywhere. I must have done 3 or 4 days' climbing work in this one, limbs perfectly tireless, until I descended into the main upper Tuolumne Valley at the foot of Mount Lyell, the camp still 8 or 10 miles distant. Going up through the pine woods, past the Soda Springs dome in the dark, where there is much fallen timber, and when all the excitement of seeing things was wanting, I was tired. Arrived at the main camp at 9 o'clock, and soon was sleeping sound as death. September 9. Weariness rested away, and I feel eager and ready for another excursion, a month or 2 long, in the same wonderful wilderness. Now, however, I must turn toward the lowlands, praying and hoping heaven will shove me back again. The most telling thing learned in these mountain excursions is the influence of cleavage joints on the features sculptured from the general mass of the range. Evidently the denudation has been enormous, while the inevitable outcome is subtle, balanced beauty. Comprehended in general views, the features of the wildest landscape seem to be as harmoniously related as the features of a human face. Indeed, they look human and radiate a spiritual beauty, divine throughout, however covered and concealed by rock and snow. Mr. Delaney has hardly had time to ask me how I enjoyed my trip, though he has facilitated and encouraged my plans all summer, and declares I'll be famous some day. A kind guest that seems strange and incredible to a wandering wilderness lover, with never a thought or dream of fame, while humbly trying to trace and learn and enjoy nature's lessons. The camp stuff is now packed on the horses, and the flock is headed for the home ranch. Away we go, down through the pines, leaving the lovely lawn where we have camped so long. I wonder if I'll ever see it again. The sod is so tough and close it is scarcely at all injured by the sheep. Fortunately they are not fond of silky glacier meadow grass. The day is perfectly clear, Not a cloud or the faintest hint of a cloud is visible, and there is no wind. I wonder if in all the world, at a height of 9,000 feet, weather so steadily, faithfully calm and bright and hospitable may anywhere else be found. We are going away fearing destructive storms, though it is difficult to conceive weather changes so great. Though the water is now low in the river, the usual difficulty occurred in getting the flock across it. Every sheep seemed to be invincibly determined to die any sort of dry death rather than wet its feet. Carlo has learned the sheep business as perfectly as the best shepherd, and it is interesting to watch his intelligent efforts to push or frighten the silly creatures into the water. They had to be fairly crowded and shoved over the bank, and when at last one crossed it because it could not push its way back, the whole flock suddenly plunged in headlong together, as if the river was the only desirable part of the world. Aside from mere money profit, one would rather herd wolves than sheep. As soon as they clambered up the opposite bank, they began baaing and feeding as if nothing unusual had happened. We crossed the meadows and drove slowly up the south rim of the valley, through the same woods I had passed on my way to Cathedral Peak, and camped for the night by the side of a small pond on the top of a big lateral moraine. September 4. In the morning, at daybreak, not one of the 2,000 sheep was in sight. Examining the tracks, we discovered that they had been scattered, perhaps by a bear. In a few hours all were found and gathered into one flock again. Had a fine view of a deer. How graceful and perfect in every way it seemed, as compared with the silly, dusty, tousled sheep. From the high ground hereabouts had another grand view to the northward, a heavy swelling sea of domes and round-backed ridges, fringed with pines, and bounded by innumerable sharp-pointed peaks, grey and barren-looking, though so full of beautiful life. Another day of the calm, cloudless kind, purple in the morning and evening. The evening glow has been very marked for the last 2 or 3 weeks, perhaps the zodiacal light. September 11. Cloudless, slight frost, calm. Fairly started downhill, and now are camped at the west end meadows of Lake Tenaya, a charming place. Lake smooth as glass, mirroring its miles of glacier-polished pavements and bold mountain walls. Find aster still in flower. Here is about the upper limit of the dwarf form of the Gold Cup oak, 8,000 feet above sea level, reaching about 2,000 feet higher than the California black oak, Quercus californicus. Lovely evening. The lake reflections after dark, marvellously impressive. September 12. Cloudless day, all pure sun gold. Among the magnificent silver firs once more, within 2 miles of the brink of Yosemite, at the famous Portuguese bear camp. Chaparral of Gold Cup oak, manzanita and ceanothus abundant hereabouts, wanting about the Tuolumne meadows, though the elevation is but little higher there. The 2-leaved pine, though far more abundant about the Tuolumne meadow region, reaches its greatest size on stream sides hereabouts, and around meadows that are rather boggy. All the best dry ground is taken by the magnificent silver fir, which here reaches its greatest size and forms a well-defined belt. A glorious tree. Have fine bed of its boughs tonight. September 13. Camp this evening at Yosemite Creek, close to the stream, on a little sand flat near our old campground. The vegetation is already brown and yellow and dry. The creek almost dry also. The slender form of the 2-leaved pine on its bank is, I think, the handsomest I have anywhere seen. It might easily pass at first sight for a distinct species, though surely only a variety, Mariana, due to crowded and rapid growth on a good soil.